Well, welcome to another episode of Sunday Club at Weth. My name's John, and today we're thinking about the topic of temptation. Temptation, about those times when we're all tempted to say and do things we know we shouldn't, or when we're tempted not to do those things and not to say the things that we know we should. It's just the same. We know there's the right things to do, and we know when we're tempted to do the wrong things. All of us, whether you're an adult or whether you're a child, we all are tempted. Me too. I mean, just 5 minutes ago, I was considering getting in the freezer, well, not climbing into the freezer, no, but opening the door to the freezer and getting an ice cream out. And I thought, well, I could sit here eat an ice cream in front of you. One, it'd be very messy, and two, I wouldn't be able to speak at the same time. Probably funny for you to watch and listen to, but I thought, no, I'm not going to just have an ice cream, even though I love the flavours and taste and, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. Maybe later, who knows, maybe later. You see, temptation, as I said, affects everyone. Today, we're remembering the story of Joseph and his brothers. And Joseph's brothers were tempted. And Joseph, too, was tempted in the story. But before that, let's think about, are you ever tempted to say something or do something? When are you tempted? Where are you tempted? Or what are you tempted to do or say? I mean, for me, probably the greatest temptation, and now I don't even need to go far. That temptation is there. I mean, I used to have to walk into a town centre or a place that had a particular shop. And as I walked past this shop, I'd be drawn to walk in. I mean, I'm talking about a guitar shop. Now, I don't know if that's your temptation or not. Probably not. But if it is, you will understand. You'll have your own version of this. But for me, when those guitar shops were around, and there are less of them around now, things have changed. More and more of those shops are just online. But when I was walking along the high street and I knew there was a guitar shop, well, I'd be drawn in. I wouldn't be able to stop myself walking in. Now, that's fine, walking into a guitar shop. Nothing wrong with that. Having a little look around, having a peruse, looking at the guitars that I like the look of, like the sound of, looking at the other guitars that I don't like the look of, I don't like the sound. Those that are too expensive, those that are perhaps even a bit cheap and nasty, who knows? A whole range to look at. And it was fine to look. The problem is, if I go looking, and if I look and spend enough time, maybe play one or two of them, I might be tempted to consider buying one. Maybe even selling one of the ones I've got to buy that one, because that one's better and that one sounds different, and yeah, this one would be great, this one would... It starts with a look and it can continue and get worse. You see, I could be tempted to spend money, maybe money that I don't have, maybe money that I don't need to spend if I spent long enough in those shops. And of course now, there are online shops, aren't there? Now, before I lie down, you start asking me some deep and meaningful questions to try and sort me out, and it would take a long time. For me, that's one issue. I've got to be careful. I don't spend too long in those music shops or too long looking at guitars in online shops, because looking's fine and showing an interest and finding out what's on sale and what's been designed and made at the moment, that's fine. And it's all right to look, and it's interesting to look, but then it can grow, can't it? And it can be the same for you. Probably not about guitars, but about something else. I don't know what it is for you. What might you be tempted perhaps to consider? Perhaps spending money, or investing too much time and attention to, or perhaps something you watch that you know isn't good for you, or maybe something that you could read, and that wouldn't be healthy either, or good for you. Or maybe a point of view, someone who says, this is what you should think. This is what you should believe. And we need to consider, is that right? Is that true? Is that good for me? Who knows? We need to reflect on that and think about it. Well, there's a Chinese proverb, and I'll read you this. I'll tell you this Chinese proverb, and then we'll get into God's word, because it's far more helpful than Chinese proverbs. But the Chinese proverb reminds us that temptation is a little bit like a bird that lands on your head. Now, if you've ever had a bird that lands on your head, you clearly want to waft it away. You wouldn't let it stay on your head. I don't think you would. No, I wouldn't anyway. And that's a bit like temptation. when temptation lands on your head, if it was like a bird, you'd knock it off and say, no, I'm not being tempted. I'm not doing that. I'm not thinking that. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to be strong. I'm not going to just do that. No. And it's a bit like a bird that lands on your head, temptation. You know, knock it off and say, no, I'm not going to think like that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to join in with that behaviour. I'm not going to agree with that person. But imagine if you didn't knock the bird off your head. That'd be like temptation would just stay there like the bird, and like a bird would make a nest. Birds do, don't they? They make a nest. Imagine if you let the temptation land on your head like the bird, and it would continue to stay there, and that bird made a nest on your head. I mean, it's a strange thought, isn't it? That's what this proverb says. Don't let the bird make a nest on your head like a temptation. Don't let temptation become your behaviour, what you do. Don't let that dictate you and what you are about. Well, let me read you these verses from 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And it says these words, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verses 12 and 13. You ready? So, if you think you're standing firm, be careful you don't fall. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. In other words, God will help you when you're tempted. He always provides a way out. He always helps us so we don't fall under that temptation. We mustn't think we've got it all sussed in life and we'll never get tempted, because we will. But we can stand firm and we can know that God will help us have a way out. He will make a way so that we can stand firm against those temptations. So let's now watch and listen to the story of Joseph and his brothers, and I'll see you a little bit later. Coats and dreams. Joseph dreamed, his brothers schemed, and when it was all through, God dreamed Joseph's dreams with him, and Joseph's dream came true. Joseph was the favourite son of Jacob, his old dad. So Joseph did a lot of things that made his brothers mad. He snitched on them when they did wrong. That really got their goat. But what they hated most of all was Joseph's lovely coat. Jacob made it many-coloured, reds and golds all round, while all the other brothers had to wear were coats of brown and brown. Then Joseph started having dreams. I think this is a sign. We all have sheaves of wheat, he said, and yours bowed down to mine. And then I dreamed that you were stars, and father was the sun, and you all joined with mum the moon to honour me as one. That really was the final straw. The brothers were fed up. The time had come. They all agreed to deal with this proud pup. So when they got him on his own, out in the fields one day, they grabbed him and they made a pact to take his coat away. We'll take his life as well, they cried, and end this dreamer's dreams. We'll say a lion ate him up. It was an evil scheme. And then one brother said as much. Reuben was his name. I will not take my brother's life. I will not take the blame. Let's put him in this pit, he said. Make him stew and pout. He hoped to come back later on and pull his brother out. But just as soon as Reuben left, some traders wandered by. Let's sell the dreamer as a slave, Brother Judah cried. 20 silver coins they got. Then they killed a goat and took its blood and spread it on their many-coloured coat. They showed it to poor Jacob to prove his son
had died, while off to Egypt Joseph went, a slave all bound and tied. Joseph dreamed, his brothers schemed, and when it was all through, God dreamed Joseph's dream with him, and Joseph's dream came true.
So Joseph and his brothers, it's an amazing story, and we haven't told you the whole story because it's a big story. It's like a blockbuster, maybe even in 3 parts. It really is. If it was a film, it would be definitely like at least 2 hours long, maybe 2.5. It really would. Well, Joseph and his brothers were annoyed at times about who Joseph was and what he stood for and what he did. And at times, they must have been so irritated. Why was he the favourite? It's not right, is it? You don't want your children to be favourites, one or the other. Can you imagine if your brother or your sister were the favourite person in the family, the favourite child in the family? How annoying it would be if they all had all the attention, all the money spent on them, all the special things, and you got left behind and forgotten about. You would be really annoyed. But of course, imagine if it carried on. Each time you noticed it would get you more and more angry. Well, Jacob seemed to favour Joseph. And whatever we think about that, and we don't think it's a good thing, no, but that's what Jacob did. He gave Joseph all his, most of his attention, and he certainly had a nice fancy coat that his brothers didn't have. And eventually, because of Joseph sort of telling his brothers all these dreams about how he was the important one and they should bow to him and they are less important than he was, they eventually thought enough's enough, and they decided to do him in. I mean, it's an awful thing, but they'd got to the point where they just couldn't take any more. Hope you've never got to that point with your family. Well, Joseph, even though he was put in a pit, even though he was sold to some market traders, and he was off to Egypt, sort of in handcuffs, even though his dad thought he'd been killed by a lion, of all things, and his brothers had disowned him and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. Even though all that bad things happened, Joseph stood firm. Even when he was tempted himself, when he was in Egypt with Potiphar and Potiphar's wife, he did not succumb. He didn't actually fall into the temptation, and he stood firm. Even though he was sent into prison and it looked like the end for him, God was faithful and kept him safe. And it reminds me of the importance of standing firm when we're tempted. The importance of standing firm against temptation. And it's a challenge, whether it's standing firm about buying a guitar, or whether it's standing firm when someone says something that's mean at school or with one of your friends, and you decide that you're not prepared to say or do the things that these people say to do or to go along with. It's very, very important to stand firm. So let me pray for you now that you will stand firm against the temptations that you face. We'll all face them, but we need to stand firm, don't we? Let me pray. Lord, help us to stand firm, to face the temptations that we all face. Help us to remember that you are with us, and you will help us with a way out, that we're able to stand up to the temptations we face. Help us to stand for you, stand for what is right and true. Help us to remember others, Lord, and not remember always ourselves. Help us to put you first, others second, and ourselves last. And Lord God, when we're tempted to say and do the wrong things, help us to stand firm for you and the right things. Amen. Amen. Well, thanks for joining us. We've got a song at Sunday Club to finish. Hope you have a great summer, and I hope to see you next week. God bless.
There's nothing you can't do. You've been faithful throughout history. Your promises are true. Many people through the centuries have known and trusted trusted you. And everyone could sing the endless song about the wonderful things you do. Every moment of every day you've been faithful in every way. Every moment throughout history you've been good, you've been good. Every moment of every day you've been faithful in every way. Every moment throughout history you've been good, you've been good. You're the God of the impossible, there's nothing you can't do. You've been faithful throughout history, your promises are true. Oh, many people through the centuries have known and trusted you. And everyone could sing the endless song about the wonderful things you do.